I will never be alone in my apartment again. After that incident, a friend always sits with me in the evenings until my parents come home from work. My friends walk me home from school. I am always surrounded by people, and at night I start to shiver. I get hysterical. It takes me a long time to get over it. It happened last summer. Me, my second cousin, and some young guys who were her friends were walking along the sidewalk. Everyone was in a great mood except me. Lisa kept making a fool of me in front of the boys, laughing, and they smiled, looking at me like I was an idiot. Lisa asked me strange things I didn't understand. I didn't answer, and she laughed loudly at me. She was drinking some kind of cocktail, and it apparently affected her behavior. One of the guys, Alex, kept trying to change the subject, but he failed, and Lisa continued her attack. She was 4 years older than me, and her friends were even older. I became uncomfortable in their company, and I didn't want to go with them from the beginning, but Lisa, being sober, promised me it would be fun. But I would rather stay with them and endure the abuse than go home. After yelling insultingly at my little sister reaching the elevator, I opened the door and stepped inside. As the elevator took me up to the 8th floor, I thought about what had happened. I was filled with anger and despair. It was hurtful to hear my sister mock me in front of guys. Honestly, I wanted to punch her in the face. My fists clenched involuntarily, and I jerked out of the elevator and nervously slid the key into the keyhole. Music. That's what saves me. I sat down on the bed and put on my headphones. No one was home. My parents had gone to the resort, leaving me and my sister alone. We would finally have parties every day. My sister would invite guys over, and we would have fun and party hard. That's what I thought when I first heard the news. Now I felt depressed, but even more angry. How dare she do whatever she wants? Suddenly I heard something fall in the next room. Or rather, I felt that almost imperceptible pulse, the vibration of the floor. I took out one earphone and listened. I didn't hear anything. I decided to check it out. Humming along to the music playing on my phone, I went to the hall, where I didn't notice any fallen objects. Went around to all the rooms, didn't find anything either. Something must have fallen from the neighbors. I decided, heading back to my room in a more or less tolerable mood than before. I stopped half a step away. Something was rustling. The sound was intermittent and frequent, like someone was beating their palm against the wall, periodically screeching against it. As soon as I listened, the sound disappeared. Strange. Turning the volume down, I sat on the bed again, but I was already more alert. In a few hours, I hadn't heard those sounds again, and went to bed peacefully. The fact that my sister never came home before I went to bed didn't surprise me. Probably partying with her so-called friends or drinking beer at one of them. The realization made me feel even more resentful. Still, I was able to sleep for a little while. At about 3 in the morning, I woke up to the same rustling sound. I didn't think much of it, but I got up on my elbow and listened again. My first thought was to set up mousetraps. After I felt the sound travel up the sidewalls and across the ceiling, I felt creepy. It was like someone scratching their fingernails on the wall, gradually moving farther away and closer. I could also hear light and smooth footsteps, something running along the ceiling and on the walls on the outside of my room. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and held my breath in mute terror. My eyes ran along the dark walls and ceiling following the sound. It wasn't 2, it wasn't 4. There were many more. They were shuffling their feet quickly and making distinctive sounds. I prayed that it turned out to be a dream. Several times those feet ran across my door but never opened it. Tears came out of my eyes and I hugged my knees and just waited for it to be over. Suddenly there was dead silence. The sound disappeared. For about half an hour I lay in bed without moving. Then the fear slowly receded, and I was able to unclench my knees. After a few minutes I dared to sit up in bed, and soon I decided to peer out of the room and put my feet down on the cold floor. Shivering, I walked over to the light switch and turned on the light. The room was still quiet, and that was hopeful. Reaching for the knob, I opened the door. My eyes, still well versed in the darkness, caught some movement in the corner of the ceiling. It was something lurking in the darkness of the apartment. I felt dizzy. I thought I was about to faint. But my legs held me firmly, and my mind calmly watched my inner mute hysteria. My eyes probably doubled in size. The light from my room illuminated the gray, dead skin of parts of my body. It seemed to cover my legs. But I soon realized there was a pair of arms present as well. The creature looked like a spider that raised its knees above its head. When I opened the door, it turned its face toward me with lightning speed. Its neck tilted unnaturally, and the dead skin was covered in numerous folds. The face, it was Lisa's face. It was as if she was struggling to gulp in a breath of air. Her mouth was open, her lower lip nibbled. The eyes were scary to look into. There was no bloodlust or lust to eat me on the spot, just a kind of horror and despair. The skin on the right side of my face was dried out. After a few seconds, the eyes rolled back. The eyeballs twitched convulsively, as if they wanted to return to their former position. This picture I watched for a few seconds until I was distracted by a sudden movement of a hand. Lisa's transformation. The hand was broken and leaned back. It was running along the ceiling, making that very rustling sound. I felt like she was asking me for help, and all this time she wanted to open the door of my room, but wouldn't do it herself because she was afraid of scaring me. Tears froze on my cheeks. It seemed to me that this was the last second of the frozen position. Then her face contorted beyond recognition. Her eyebrows rose, her mouth curved in horrified surprise, and her larynx was still gulping for air. Her hand began to twitch more frequently. Her legs and arms took a few steps forward toward me, and I saw the full extent of her body. Her shoulders and hips were twisted and her head hung down. I felt like she was about to move on me. And so it did. The creature hissed with broken arms and legs and quickly crawled toward me, bypassing the ceiling. I ran into the room and slammed the door shut with its back against it. That was the only time I screamed. I shrieked, screamed, cried. I was stunned by my own screaming. Soon my voice broke and I was just wheezing without realizing it. My chest ached from the frantic beating of my heart. The creature was running around the door and I began to get chills. It wasn't even going to get into my room, it was just running. I was found on the floor. It was 5 in the morning. The first person I saw was the upstairs neighbor. I jerked hard and accidentally hit her, but she hurriedly took my hand and tried to calm me down. I couldn't speak, only made strange noises like mooing. The neighbor told me that my screams must have been heard in the house next door. She knocked on our door, but I was just screaming. She had to call the emergency services. They opened the door, but by then I was already lying on the floor unconscious. People were walking around the apartment. It even seemed to me that I was under the influence of some substances, and now I was in the subway. They were walking around, examining the apartment, shining flashlights. Neighbors were timidly peeking in and whispering among themselves. When asked what had happened, I couldn't answer anything and I couldn't relive it again, not even in words. Nothing more was heard about Lisa. Her friends said that after I left, she headed after me. Alex was even surprised that she didn't catch up with me and apologize. After all, that was why she left them. The case and her disappearance hung for 6 months, but then it was shelved. My parents came the very next day, but even to them I didn't explain everything. I lied about being drunk and having a bad dream, because if I told them everything, they'd put me in a mental institution. Now I can't sit alone in the apartment. I get a pounding and an animal fear when I think that this creature might come back.